my pleasure to welcome you to today's Chats with Champions. Our speaker, Ms. Linda Greenlaw, will discuss her newest mystery, Silver Hitch, the third in her Jane Bunker series. That chat series is sponsored by Sherman's Maine Coast Bookshops. Our next Chats presenter will be Mr. Jack Bork on Tuesday, June 13th at 10 a.m. His topic will be the history of ocean garbage. At this time, I would ask everyone to silence your electronic devices. Also, I would like to thank our videographer, Mal Gormley. Linda Greenlaw stepped on board her first commercial fishing vessel at age 19. It was a swordfish boat, out for 30 days at a time. She signed on as cook, as cash for college. Upon graduating from Colby College as an English and government major in 1983, Greenlaw began fishing year-round. According to Greenlaw, her parents were not happy with her decision to become a commercial swordfish fisherman, as they believed she would be wasting her education. 3 years later, in 1983, she was named captain of the 67-foot swordfish fishing boat, Gloria Dawn, as the only female swordfish fishing boat captain on the East Coast. In 1991, Greenlaw, then the captain of the Hannah Bowden, was fishing with a companion boat, the Andrea Gale. She was the last person to speak with the captain of that boat, whose tragic loss was the feature of Sebastian Junger's bestseller and subsequent film, The Perfect Storm. In a quick digression, my husband and I had the opportunity to see that movie at a drive-in, and it was quite the venue to life-size movie. It was wonderful. Greenlaw was prominently featured and praised in both book and film. The widespread fascination with commercial fishing in the seas led to Greenlaw being featured as captain of the Hannah Bowden on the Discovery Channel. With Junger's success on this bestsellers list, Greenlaw began receiving calls from publishers to pen her own book, leading to the birth of The Hungry Ocean. This book rose up on the New York Times bestseller list, the first of her 3 books to achieve that distinction. The Lobster Chronicles and All Fishermen Are Liars being the other 2. Greenlaw's writings have included additional titles about commercial fishing, 2 cookbooks co-authored with her mother, Martha Greenlaw, and an intimate memoir about becoming a mother at the age of 46. And this little tidbit, hot off the press, Linda just shared, she's going to be mother of the bride in September on the island of While best known for her nonfiction, in 2007, Greenlaw changed genres and began writing her Jane Bunker mystery series. This series combines Greenlaw's excellence at writing about Maine and the ocean with a talent for telling a good story. In Silver Hitch, which was released yesterday, Jane Bunker thought she would escape the pollution, noise, and dead bodies when she left her job as a Miami homicide detective and moved back to the idyllic town of Greenhaven, Maine. But through her work as a marine insurance investigator, it appears that Jane left behind the bustle of the city, but not the murder. Author Sebastian Junger said, Greenlaw proves that she's as skillful as a mystery writer as she is a fishing boat captain, and that says a lot. Greenlaw was a recipient of the American Literary Association's Alex Award, the U.S. Maritime Literature Award, and the New England Book Award. Greenlaw was married in 2012 to Steve Wessel, owner of Westmac Custom Boats. Raised in the Bath area, she currently resides on Isle of Howe and in Surrey, Maine. Her current lobster boat, the Ernest, is a 41-foot vessel that she fishes inshore for lobster and halibut. After her talk, Linda has graciously offered to sign copies of her books, which will be made available for sale by Sherman's. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Linda Greenlaw, Maine fishing boat captain and author of the book.
that I continue to receive. This is book number 10 for me, and launching a new book in Maine. All of Maine is my home. I just can't thank you enough for being here. It means a lot. I honestly have to say it's much easier for me to present far, far away from home. There's comfort in knowing that the audience will never see you again, which is not the case here. I think this is my 4th or 5th time speaking here. So, I hope no one will be disappointed that I will not be reading from my book. I just don't do that. I can read, I promise you I can. I was 5. That came as a surprise to a lot of people, it seems, after the publishing of my first book, The Hungry Ocean. I was never, ever the recipient of a gift of a book until my first book was published. And then I started getting books from total strangers. I probably owned every book about fishing ever written. Anyway, that's a long way of saying, hey, if you came here to hear me read, you're going to be disappointed. And usually during the Q&A, there might be someone in the audience who looks innocent enough and harmless enough. It's usually an elderly woman who says, I came here to hear you read. Can you please read? I'd like you to start on page 108. So, if you're here, don't raise your hand. Thank you for the nice introduction, and I am going to talk about my new book, Silver Hitch, but I like to pave the way to the book by starting at the beginning, and many of you have probably heard this sometime before. In fact, you just heard part of it, but I'm going to do it again. I was raised on and off the coast of Maine, where boats and fishing are the way of life. I spent my early childhood trying to catch anything that swam or crawled along the shores surrounding my home. When I was at an age where kids learned to ride bikes, I learned to row. When 10-speed bikes were all the rage, I had my first 10-horsepower outboard motor. My world quickly grew from tidal pools to the Cove, to Penobscot Bay, to great oceans. At the age of 19, yes, I was accepted at Colby College, and I was desperately in need of money for school. I did what I thought was a natural thing. I threw a garbage bag full of dungarees and t-shirts onto the deck of the Walter Alden Lehman Sr. out of Harpswell, Maine, and left for my first 30-day saltwater, blue water adventure in pursuit of swordfish. And it was at the age of 19 that I absolutely fell in love with my life. I fished my way through school, and back then I said I was fishing for tuition. And yes, my parents were unhappy with my decision after I graduated to start my career of commercial fishing. I worked my way up to the captain seat in a very traditional way. I stayed on the same boat long enough to become first mate. When the owner of that boat bought a second boat, that was my first opportunity to be a captain. I have skippered many boats over the course of many different years, many different fisheries. My first love being swordfish. Most of my experience is catching swordfish. I have fished for swordfish the entire North Atlantic Ocean from Brazil to Labrador. I have fished the Indian Ocean off Kenya and Somalia. So it's been a great life, and it's taken me all over the place. Yes, in 1991, I was a skipper of a boat called the Hannah Bowden and encountered what was then called the storm of the century. Now, there's been a lot of storm of the century storms, weather systems that come along. This one later became known as the perfect storm, with a book by Sebastian Junger. And people ask all the time, how did the perfect storm change your life? My answer to that is the storm itself, the weather event, did not change my life. 1991, I had been fishing for many years. I was all too aware of the dangers inherent in going to sea. I had lost friends. I knew of many boats that had gone down, all hands lost. This one was a little closer to home. I knew the men a little bit better than I had some of the others in my past. But still, I continued to fish. It didn't change my life. The book about the storm, I hold responsible for many significant changes in my life. And not the whole book, just one very small passage. And I never miss an opportunity to quote Sebastian Junger so you can understand how someone else's work can affect your life. And I quote, the Hannah Bowden is skippered by a Colby College grad named Linda Greenlaw. Not only is Greenlaw one of the only women in the business, she's the best captain on the East Coast, period. Year after year, trip after trip, she makes more money than anyone. When the Hannah Bowden unloads her catching lobster, swordfish prices plummet halfway around the world. Love that part. I'm sure you can imagine what a tough image this has been for me to live up to. Very generous portrayal. And one of the more humorous changes this has brought my way is in people's initial reactions to me. If they're aware of this woman who survived the perfect storm, they meet me. After hello, I always hear, "Wow, we thought you'd be a lot bigger." There's generally some disappointment or disenchantment upon meeting me for the first time. I'm sorry about that. More significant changes in my life. I got in from fishing, and I hit the perfect storm was on the top of every bestseller list on the planet. I hit the button on the answering machine, and I'll remember it like it was yesterday. "Hi, Linda. This is Emily Bessler calling from Simon & Schuster. We've read The Perfect Storm, and we're intrigued with this female fisherman thing you have going on. Would you like to write a book?" And at the time, I thought, no. That sounds like a lot of work. I never even returned the woman's call. I love my life. I never dreamed, aspired, attempted to do anything but fish. Why would I change anything? Well, the phone calls kept coming in. Very similar phone calls, major publishers in New York. "We've read The Perfect Storm. Will you write a book?" And I had to understand what an opportunity I was being handed. I have friends who would kill for the opportunity to have a book published. I have friends who write beautifully, yet they get rejection letters, knowing full well that most of those letters are coming from someone who hasn't even looked at their material. So how fortunate was I to be handed this opportunity? And one of the things when I was touring with my very first book that I always mentioned because it was just dumbfounding to me, the very first thing I learned going from fishing to the world of publishing was there's this thing called an advance. They pay you before you do the work. Just incredible. It never happens fishing. Fishing, you're lucky. You never get paid. Anyway, it took me a year to write my first book, The Hungry Ocean. And I can say that it's the most difficult year of my life. Writing is the most difficult work I have ever done. I knew it would be tough, but I didn't really understand how difficult it would be to take something from here or here and get it down on paper in some kind of articulate form that someone else might enjoy reading. No one was more surprised than I was when The Hungry Ocean became a bestseller. And that success brought more opportunity. The second book, The Lobster Chronicles, was the first book, The Hungry Ocean, is about a real sword fishing trip, dock to dock. It's very much a memoir. The second book, The Lobster Chronicles, is about the inshore lobster fishery and my favorite place on the planet, Idaho, Maine. Lobster fishing, the community, my family, and my friends. One really interesting thing about promoting a book is reading reviews, and it's really interesting to hear what other people, if it's a good review, think of your work, and it's usually something you hadn't intended. And I can tell you that with The Lobster Chronicles, my favorite review of that book was, I read in the newspaper, that this person's thought on the book was that Greenlaw had written a love letter to her family and her community. While that was not my intention, and I didn't see that in the book, I was thrilled that someone took that from my book. On the other end of the spectrum was my older sister, who said The Lobster Chronicles was a 260-page personal ad. So, there you go. and I can explain, I can defend that. It does hold merit, but when I wrote The Lobster Chronicles, I was in my late 30s, and I was unmarried, no children. I never dreamed that I would not be married with children. I had a fantastic childhood, very traditional family. I had an idyllic childhood. Friends would say I've had a very long one, and I can live with that. That's okay. So what I said in The Lobster Chronicles was that I retired from sword fishing. I was going home. I was going to lobster. I can still make my living at sea, and I'm going to settle down. I'm going to meet the guy, and I'm going to have babies. And the issue was that I moved to an island where there are 3 single men. 2 of them are gay, and the third one is my cousin. If that's a personal ad, it didn't work because many years later, I finally got married. Nothing to do with the Lobster Chronicles personal pad. Anyway, so I really always get way off track, which is probably why I should be reading from my book instead of talking. Too bad. So the success of the Lobster Chronicles brought another opportunity, and I wrote my third book, All Fishermen Are Liars. And that title served me very well until I was standing trial for fishing violations in Canada. Guilty, as charged. Okay, 3 books, the first 3 books, all New York Times bestsellers, and the publishers want more. And I am now at a point where I've written 3 books that are really memoirs. I don't have anything left to say about myself. I am so sick of Linda Greenlaw. And anyone who's read the first 3 books, I'm thinking they know every thought I've ever had. I'm starting to make stuff up. So the publishers thought, now this is a good thing, we want to keep it going. How about writing fiction? And their suggestion was to start with a mystery series. I signed a contract to write 3 books in this mystery series, and I was pretty excited about it because I thought this is going to be so much easier than writing nonfiction. Fiction, I mean, yeah, just make shit up, right? I mean, how hard can that be? Well, I learned very quickly how mistaken I was about my idea of how easy it was going to be to write fiction. It seems, at least in my case, that starting with a totally blank slate, where anything is possible, is a lot more difficult than writing my own story. I know my story, I have these seeds, I don't throw this stuff in. So very difficult. I wrote 2 mysteries, Slipknot and Fisherman's Bend, and then I changed publishing houses. And the next publishing house was very interested in more nonfiction from Linda Greenlaw, and I had a few more years' experience and more stuff to say. So I wrote a book called Seaworthy, which was my return to sword fishing after my unsuccessful attempt to get married and have babies on Idaho. And then I wrote a book entitled Life-Saving Lessons, which is a story of taking in a 15-year-old girl and really raising her. Switched publishing houses again. I'm not fickle, my editor is, and when he jumps, I jump with him. So, actually very loyal. And I'm back to mysteries, and yes, Silver Hitch is number 3 in what will be at least a 4-book series, because I'm now writing book number 4. I'm on chapter 3 of book number 4 in the Jane Bunker mystery series. And now I will share some thoughts about mysteries. I'm glancing at my notes, and it's too late for the notes, so here we go. Challenges beyond just the work of writing and how difficult it is to write. Challenges in writing a mystery plot is my biggest challenge. You know, to plant a seed, to nurture it, to embroil, embed, uproot, and in the end, resolve with no loose ends. It's incredibly difficult. Now, those of you who have read mystery series in the past probably understand that most mystery writers have a formula. I do not have a formula, and I hope I never will. Some of them are very structured, rigid formulas, and you know, the first clue is going to be on page 3, and then the second clue is going to be, and then the red herring, and then, well, I've read these series and I enjoy them. The problem is, in the 3rd book, I have solved the mystery by page 70. I continue to read the book because I want to know at the end that I was right, and I always am. So, I could sort of not be 100% honest with you when I say the reason I do not want to use a formula is because I think it will sort of take away from the storytelling and the creativity and just letting it flow. If I were to be 100% honest, I would say I'm just a little lazy about outlining. So it's just better for me. My very first mystery, I did make the mistake of just diving in and writing with no outline at all, and I was 3/4 of the way through the book, and I had no idea who had committed the murder. So when I finally had to make a decision, and it was so much work to go back and fix things along the way, so that, you know, just to make it work in the end, that I did learn from that experience, and I now do start with a very loose outline. At least I know who was killed and who killed. The rest of it, you know, I can kind of let it flow. The other challenge in writing mysteries, maybe not mysteries, but just fiction and writing in the first person, is keeping the main character independent, not letting her become Linda Greenlaw. And that's difficult. I mean, Jane Bunker, every thought she has, every emotion she feels, every deed, I mean, it has to come from me. So it's difficult. I've made a couple of, the people who know me well probably realize that I've made a couple really obvious attempts to make Jane Bunker not Linda Greenlaw. The biggest example of that is Jane Bunker's childhood and upbringing, very different from mine. Although she was born, started off on a very small island off the coast of Maine, she was a huge disappointment to her father's family in that they were fishermen and they needed boys. And then when Jane Bunker's mother gave birth to her younger brother who was Down syndrome, that was the last straw. And the mother was pretty much shunned. So she basically kidnapped her baby and toddler, got ashore, threw the kids in the back of a station wagon, and drove the entire eastern seaboard to Miami, which is where Jane grew up and was raised in a neighborhood, a poor neighborhood that was primarily Latino. So you can imagine this is like way different from my life. Okay, so Jane Bunker's not Linda Greenlaw. The other really obvious example of Jane Bunker not being Linda Greenlaw is Jane Bunker is extremely frugal. She goes to the cafe in the morning and she gets the cheapest thing on the menu, whether she likes it or not. That's not me. I mean, I can tell you, I spend like the drunken sailor. And I spend it, I have no idea what a savings account is. And I honestly, and this is one of the things that's difficult about writing and creating a character, I truly do not know the feeling of going to bed hungry. Okay, so challenges in me writing about someone who clearly does know what it's like to go to bed very hungry. Okay, let me see. I do have to look now to see what else maybe I was going to say about Silver Hitch. And I love questions, Q&A, but I probably have a little more I could say about this. Sorry about this. Yeah, I guess I should say I've talked about the difficulties in writing mysteries, and I will tell you that I take comfort in my setting and my characters. I know the people in coastal Maine fishing communities. I know fishermen. I know the scenery. I know the weather. I know how it feels to be in bad weather at sea. And whenever I can get Jane Bunker on a boat, we are golden. Those are the passages that my editor doesn't touch. These are great. Everything else, well, we could use a little work. But that's okay. I will tell you about Silver Hitch. It is a knot. Okay, the titles of the books are not Slip Knot, Fisherman's Bend is a knot, and Silver Hitch is a knot, and it's a knot that's not used anymore. But 100 years ago, men working in a shipyard, when they were using a block and tackle, when the block was no longer functional, they'd take the sheave, S-H-E-A-V-E, out of the center of the block, and they'd use that with a Silver Hitch, put a line through the center of the block and tie a stopper knot on. And when they were hauling spars or masts around the shipyard, they'd take a couple wraps of the line around the mast, and then they'd take a couple wraps around the sheave, and when they pulled on it, the sheave would jam up against the spar. It's a very simple thing, but it's a cool title, and it works for this book in particular, because this is the first of my books that I have set in Maine winter, which has been refreshing for me to be able to write about snow and cold, because I've written so much about fog and beautiful sunsets and things like that. And it worked really well because Jane Bunker spent the majority of her life in Miami, Florida. So it was really fun describing winter sort of through someone's eyes who's seeing and shoveling snow for the first time. So that's been kind of fun. I think I'm ready for questions, but there's one thing I always share, and it has nothing to do with Silver Hitch, but I always like to say this whenever I'm talking to anyone. I like to just mention the title of my first book again, The Hungry Ocean, because it just means so much to me. Some of you are aware that that title is from a Shakespearean sonnet, and I've learned through the course of my travels that the title means different things to different people. And to me, the hungry ocean refers to the ocean's ability to totally consume. I've been fishing since I was a kid. I have been consumed by it. I know it sounds cliche to say you're drawn to or taken with something, but I like the way I feel when I'm at sea. I am passionate about catching fish. And as proud as I am to be recognized as an author, nothing makes me prouder than to say I'm a fisherman. And at this point in my life, I doubt that's ever going to change. So thank you again for coming. It means a lot, and I'm here to answer questions and eventually sign books. So if you have any questions, and if you don't have questions, that's great too. Yes. Don't ask me to read.
What's your major in college?
I majored in English at Colby College, and for what reason? Well, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I enjoyed reading, so I took a lot of literature courses. I did not take creative writing courses at all, but of course there's always a lot of writing in any college course, and I had, when I signed my first book deal, I had maybe a false confidence in my ability to write, and people generally ask, how did you know that you could write? Well, I did have some confidence, and that came in two different ways. One, I've always been a letter writer. I had always written handwritten letters, and people would always compliment me on my letters, which is kind of weird. Like, I'd see somebody say, hey, that I still have that letter. I read it the other day. I'm thinking, okay, that's really weird, but okay, that's cool. And the other thing is, this is kind of funny. I was a junior at Colby College, and I had one of these blue book exam booklets handed back to me, and the professor had written on the outside, Ms. Greenlaw, you are unfamiliar with the material in this course. Well written, B+. Like, okay. So, and I do speak. I'm asked and invited to speak to kids a lot, schools, and I always try to impress upon the kids, the students, the importance of the ability to write, to articulate in writing. Believe me, it's gotten me out of a lot of trouble through the years. Just the ability to write an apology even is a good thing. So thank you. Yes.
So I'm curious about the 3-book contract. If it affected, how it affected you to have, well, I'm presuming that there was a deadline for the sequel books, is that right?
Yes, yeah, there's always a deadline.
How does that affect the writing process to know you got to have it done by this date?
Well, in my case, it affects it in a good way because I actually work. I think with no deadline, because I don't enjoy writing, I don't enjoy that. I love my books. I do not enjoy the process of getting the book done. So in my case, it's really good to have a deadline, and I treat my writing the same way I do my fishing, and that is when I'm working on a book, I have a very rigid schedule. I get up in the morning, I write in the morning. I try to do it 7 days a week. Any distraction is so welcome that, pretty much my family and friends know not to call me before noontime if I'm writing, because I'm going to go do that with you. It's a lot more fun than whatever I've got going on. So the deadlines are good. And I'm maybe not as much now as I was in my first few books. I was almost like a school kid handing in a homework assignment and always very much wanting to please the teacher. That's the kind of kid I was, and apparently I'm the same in adulthood. This leads me to something that I'm sure I meant to say and didn't, and that was the difficulty in writing. And this doesn't really go with your question at all, but it's something that I did want to say, and that is, it doesn't matter what I am writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or cookbooks I've done with my mom. Every writing is very personal on some level, which makes it difficult to share. I am 10 books in, and I still get a little sick to my stomach when I hit the send button on a single chapter to my editor. I still hit it and then say, I should have looked at it one more time, or this paragraph, I just wasn't really 100%, but deadlines keep you pushing the send button. And by the same token, promoting a book, where everything is personal, is like, hey, it's awkward and it's humbling to say, here's a little piece of me, I hope you like it. So it's hard. Yes?
I just wondered, has it ever occurred to you to write about the environment that with which you're so familiar, in terms of the marine environment and any environmental concerns you might have with what's going on, with climate change that's obviously doing something in the Gulf of Maine? And
yeah, and there's so much writing on that topic by scientists, and I do indirectly write about these things in my book. I mean, I am very happy to share my opinion in many ways, and I do weave these things into my writing, whatever I'm working on. I've never had like any ambitions to sit down and write a book about my opinion of those things solely, because I don't think anybody would read it. I don't think, you know what I mean? That would be even more painful than what I'm doing. Yes.
Have you ever thought about children's books or young adult
I have,
literature?
absolutely. I would love to write some children's books, and I mentioned this to my agent some time ago, and at the time his opinion was, well, okay, you've done nonfiction, you've done fiction, you've done cookbooks, you can't do everything. I'm like, well, why not? I think it's kind of, so I'm still hoping to do that sometime, and I've met a woman who lives very close to me in Surrey, Maine, who illustrates children's books, and they're beautiful, and she actually gave me a couple of books to look at, and I assume, she does animals, I assume she can do fish, so, it's still on the back burner somewhere. I have one more mystery to get through, and then we'll see.
I think this might be more fun.
Yes, I think so. Before I signed this most recent contract for the 2 mysteries, I really wanted to write the story of the Alfaro. I was so engrossed in that I couldn't tear myself away, and I was, looking on the internet for every little bit of information I could find, and this was all unfolding, and I thought, gosh, there's so much there, and it's a story I believe needs to be told, and someone will eventually do it. I hope it's me, and I think it'll be done in the same way that The Perfect Storm was done, and there's a lot of fact, but there's also a lot of speculation, and in my case, I like to think that the speculation would be born from a lot of at-sea experience. So it's something that it's something I'm going to pitch at some point to someone and say, yeah, this is what I'd like to do. So children's books, Alfaro, yes.
When I heard you speak at the Lincoln Theater a few years ago, you were accompanied by your new husband, and you strongly hinted to him from the stage in front of the audience that he should build you a new boat. So I assume you have that boat now.
Wrong. Wrong. Yeah, so I get married for the first time at the age of 51. Surely because of circumstance, not that I was fatally flawed in any way. And I'm marrying this boat builder, and Westmac, come on, that's the nicest boat on the planet, and we're not even married yet, and I'm selling my 35-foot Duffy to a kid on Idaho. Sold my boat. I'm going to get this new boat. It's going to be awesome. I am still on the list. So I bought this 41-foot a wooden boat, actually, Ernest, not the name, the adjective. And it's a great boat. It's a great work boat, but it's not a Westmac. And I'm still waiting. It's funny. I was saying about people not ever giving me books as gifts, and in fact it's like really weird, the gifts that I receive. My engagement to my husband, before I got my ring, I got a davit, and my last birthday, I'm 56, my last birthday I got 2 bilge pumps. They are really cool bilge pumps, I have to tell you. I love them. No, actually, these are really cool. You've got to check these out. If anyone has a dinghy or a skiff that they're constantly bailing in the rainy season, look online at Renaissance Pumps, and it's PVC pipe with a pump on the bottom. You can stand up, and it's operated by a rechargeable drill battery. And so you just order it with whatever your hand tools are at home, the same brand, and you stand up. Like if I get in from fishing, it's been raining all day, I don't have to jump into the skiff, I just stand there and go, really cool. So anyway, I just kind of bought those as a birthday present. Yes.
So how do you balance your your fishing life with your writing life in terms of time?
The nice thing about lobster fishing, at least at this stage in my life, I'm not fishing 800 traps. I have between 300 and 400 traps that I fish. I don't have to go every day. I am totally responsible for myself and one other guy who's also not a guy who wants to go every day. So I can write in the morning, call my guy AJ and say, hey, let's go haul a few traps. And the two actually mesh really well, because when I'm hauling traps, again, at this stage of my life, I've been doing this a long time, the work of hauling lobster traps is somewhat mindless for me, and I can be writing in my head, if that makes sense. So the next morning when I sit down, I may even have a full paragraph polished, because I've been working on it the whole time I was hauling traps the afternoon before. So it goes well. I wouldn't be able to go sword fishing and try and write. It's just, it wouldn't work, but the lobstering, as long as I'm doing it somewhat on a part-time basis, is really good for my writing, I feel. Yes?
I have one of your cookbooks and enjoy it. I'm wondering if you segue maybe into the restaurant business at some point.
Probably not. I love to cook. I consider myself an excellent cook. I learned from my mother, who's an excellent cook. But the restaurant now, they see I'm the same way with it. That sounds like a lot of work. Never say never, because I've surprised myself a couple of times before in doing things I never thought that I would do. But I love the cookbooks as well.
I also love your cookbooks, but the crab cakes are just the best.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It changed my life.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
They mentioned that you do some halibut fishing. It's something I've always dreamed of doing. Can you tell us a little bit about how
That is so much fun. And it's, the halibut season in Maine, commercial season is May and June, that's it. And you're allowed 25 tags, you have to tag the fish, and they have to be over 42 inches in length. By the time May 1st rolls around, I am so ready to get on a boat and do something that is just, it's sheer joy. I'm not always successful. The first 2 fish I catch, I usually end up cutting up and giving them to neighbors, because everyone's pretty fish hungry by the time May 1st rolls around as well. So it's just fun, and I used to tub trawl. I don't any longer now. I have this thing called a bandit reel, this hydraulic, and I use snap-on gear. It's safer than tub trawling. Anyway, it's just a great deal of fun, and it's something I can do very close to home. It's a blast. Yes.
Can you talk about how you found your writing voice? You've clearly written different kinds of books, and is it a struggle every time?
Yeah, it's always a struggle, and my writing voice, I will say, and I know this from people who know me, they read my books in my voice. Does that make sense? My books, they say, are written exactly the way I talk and tell stories. So I guess I didn't really find my writing voice. I think it was just, it's my voice. That was probably a really crappy answer. I will tell you that I'm really careful about, I love to read, but I'm very careful to not read while I'm working on a book, because I'm so afraid that I will inadvertently, because there are authors that I love, and I will reread a passage because I like the way it sounds, I like the voice, and I'm so careful to not, wow, that sounds really good. I wonder if I put it this way. No, so I am careful to protect my voice and everyone else's, and not, it's just easy to slip. Yes?
What sort of books do you read?
I read anything that, not a particular genre. I can tell you I'm not crazy about science fiction, but almost anything else I will read. I enjoy anything that's well written. As I said, if there is just a single passage that is just lyrical prose, it's like poetry to me, and I can reread it. I love, my favorite author is Pat Conroy, and he just, maybe this is kind of funny, I think I have time, so I'll tell this little brief story. I was touring with one of my books a few years ago, And somebody in the audience asked who my favorite author was, and I said Pat Conroy, and I went on to say, like, I have like this secret crush on, I am so in love with him, I just like, really crazy. And then I sat down to sign books, and a woman came up and she wanted me to sign her book to Pat Conroy and Sally so-and-so. I'm like, oh, you like him too? And she said, he's my husband. They were vacationing in Blue Hill, Maine, which is where I was, at the library. And she said, boy, he's going to be so upset that he wasn't here for that one. So now I just say he's my favorite author. I don't go into the crush thing. Yes.
Does your husband fish with you?
No, my husband does not fish with me. Too many captains on the boat. Yeah, that doesn't work. We've tried it a couple of times just for fun. It's really not fun. So he was a lobsterman. He was raised in the Hartsville area, and he fished for many, many years. Maine maritime guy. Fished for many years before he started building boats, and now he's been building boats for many years. And I get to do the boat deliveries, which is nice. I get to drive all the new boats, and so that's fun. But it's better if we're not both on the same boat. Yes?
I just finished reading Life-Saving Lessons, and I want to thank you for writing that book. I think it was a lot of good work for a lot of different reasons. And I was wondering if either you or your daughter are interested in continuing to be an advocate for women, young women, and all the struggles they go through in general.
Yeah, I would, I can't answer for my daughter, but I can guess that the answer would be yes. And certainly the answer for me is yes. I work as a mentor. This Olympia's no leadership is some bullshit thing, but the good thing, it is, I mean, come on, leadership, blah, 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 gotta keep beating that drum, give it up, okay? The important part of it is that once a month, I go to Ellsworth High School, and I sit with 5 sophomore girls, and we just talk. And it's a very cool thing. And it's very structured. I'm supposed to get online, this Canvas program, and do these exercises. They're so corny that I just can't even go there. But it is really nice to sit, and it keeps me in touch with young girls, which is really fun for me. I will say that I have a 15-year-old boy now living with us, an Idaho kid who after 8th grade they have to go off to go to high school, and he's the son of a guy who fished with me off and on for many years, and in a way very similar childhood and upbringing. So it's a guy, it's a boy this time instead of a girl, so it's a whole new bit of challenges, but we're very glad to be doing it, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. Just got through his freshman year, almost. He has one more week to go. George Stevens Academy. He's made honor roll twice. Yay! I guess we have time for a couple more questions. Yes.
Very quickly, what is your take on the Alfaro?
I just,
Should they have been out there?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Everyone who goes to sea knows that it's risky. Anyone who goes to sea not knowing that there's a chance they're not coming home shouldn't be going to sea. My opinion of what I know is that everything was done correctly. And with the perfect storm, everyone's always looking for an excuse or a reason. Sometimes it's just Mother Nature.
Did you know any of this?
I did not directly. My brother's a Maine maritime guy, and he knew the captain very well. So anyway, still a story I want to write. Okay, one more question, and then we'll sign books. If there isn't, yes.
As a Colby grad, both of us English majors too.
Okay.
I'm curious as to whether you ever heard from your professors at Colby. Have they read your books?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. But generally when I hear from Colby College, they want money. Or they want me to come and do a talk. And I have been back to the school 2 or 3 times to do a talk. And the most recent contact with Colby College was Earl Smith there when you were there, Dean Smith. He's written a book, and he sent me the unpublished manuscript for a blurb. And believe me, Earl Smith and I probably didn't have a lot of good things going on when I was in school, but he wrote this. It's great. It's called Head of Falls, which is an area in Waterville, Maine. So look for it. It's Head of Falls, Earl Smith.
Is it published right now?
If it isn't, it's very close. It's, you know, I can't even keep track of my own schedule, so I'm not really sure, but it's, and you know, he'd be a great guy to have come talk, I think. Put him on the hook. Thank you very much.